Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are, and when you're listening to this. Welcome to the second season of the Auxiliary Marketing Club's second Tuesday series. I'm Greg Redner and proud to serve as the president of this wonderful club. So we're very glad you're here tonight. And of course, we can't start without doing a few commercials. So I'd just like to say, if you're not a member of the Auxiliary Markings Club, the question should be, why not? It remains one of the, for digital membership, one of the most cost-effective memberships you can get. You have access to all of our back catalog of auxiliary markings, our journal, and some really, really rich and wonderful scholarship. So we invite you to become a member. You, of course, don't have to be a member to be part of these groups, and we also don't have much of our newsletter behind the paywall, but still the recent things are. So we encourage you to join us. Please also check us out on social media. We actually do have a really vigorous Facebook page with a new auxiliary markings marking on every day of the year, pretty much, except when Greg is away on vacation. And they cover the gamut from all different countries and all different types of markings. We, of course, encourage you to post anything you find interesting as well. So if you don't mind liking us and paying attention to that, that's great. And also our YouTube channel has a growing catalog of our previous presentations. So we invite you to look at that as well. An exciting thing that's coming in the fall of 2026 is our first virtual Auxiliary Markings Club exhibit. There'll be more details coming on this, but we encourage you to give some thought to how you can be part of this. It will be an adjudicated exhibit, and it doesn't have to be specifically about just auxiliary markings, but we ask that they will play a large part in your story. So that's coming ahead, and we hope that you will keep your eyes open for news on that. Our presenter tonight is Regis Hoffman. If you've downloaded our wonderful auxiliary markings, considering auxiliary markings anthology that we did at the beginning of this year, Regis has a wonderful article in there, and we're really excited about his presenting tonight because, as I said to him, with the exception of his article, I know nothing about this topic at all, which is not unusual, but this is something really where I have zero bandwidth in my brain at all. So I'm really excited to learn about this. Regis is a collector of British East Africa stamps, postal history, and revenues, the British Commonwealth, worldwide military and censored mail, and Hollywood fanned mail, as we'll hear tonight. He's a columnist for the Bulletin of the Military Postal History Society and is an accredited APS philatelic judge. And of course, it's possible for you, if you have not already done so, you can download our Considering Auxiliary Markings anthology from the website. There's no cost for it, and read Regis's article afterward, as well as some of the other ones. So Regis, I'm going to turn it over to you now. I'll stop sharing and I'll let you go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks for that introduction. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay, and how's that look? You're muted, Greg.
Looks good.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Great.
All right, so tonight's topic is private auxiliary markings on Hollywood fan mail. Shown here by this wonderful example from fan mail from Yugoslavia to actor Farley Granger at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios, with this wonderful array of auxiliary markings, not at MGM, uncalled for at Paramount, uncalled for at Republic. So tonight we're going to delve into what do all these markings mean, and why are they used? And I love this topic because it's a combination of social history, fans interacting with movies, movie history, after all, who doesn't like the movies, and postal history, because there's a lot of interesting routes that these fan mail covers took that were guided by the auxiliary markings. So let's go start. So first of all, let's ask the question, what is a fan letter? Well, here is a typical example of a fan letter. These come from fans worldwide, in this case from Australia, to a movie star, in this case, silent film icon and actress Mary Pickford, at a particular studio, in this case, her own studio, Mary Pickford Studios, and in Hollywood, California. What could be simpler? Well, if things were so simple, this talk would now be over. So let's investigate why this didn't always happen. Well, first of all, let's define. A fan letter is a piece of mail sent from a movie fan to a Hollywood movie star. Sounds so simple, but there's lots of kinks in this. First of all, the immense logistics are a big factor. A popular star could receive 10,000 plus letters per week, and the studios had to process that. Also, who actually processed the fan mail? And this evolved over time because of the expense of processing the fan mail. Initially, it was the studios, but at some point later, the studio said, this is getting ridiculous. We are going to force the stars to hire their own publicity agencies to handle their fan mail. The other issue is, where was the star located? In the early days, a star was under contract to a particular studio for maybe 8-10 years. So was the star at MGM? Were they at Paramount? And what happens if you guessed the wrong studio? And also, where was the fan mail department? Was it in New York City? Because that's where the corporate offices of many of the studios were. Was the fan mail department in Hollywood? Or what about even London? Because many US studios had offices in London. So where did you address your fan letter? Because you weren't even sure of the city sometimes. So the goal is to get a letter from a movie fan to a movie star. And what this talk is about is the auxiliary markings used by private firms. So the reason I emphasize the word private is that these were used by the industry in themselves, not the post office or not the postal service. So all players in the industry use these, from studios and fan mail and publicity agencies. They all, seems like, got a memo. We're going to use auxiliary markings to solve this problem of errant fan mail. And they were generally used to forward or redirect fan letters. We're going to see many examples of that. And this is based over 30 years I've been doing this, a study of over 30,000 fan mail covers. And importantly, only about 1 to 2% of fan mail has auxiliary markings. And we've recorded over 100 different markings. Okay, so there's quite an array of such markings, going from the early days of the silent film era all the way up to the modern day. So what are some types of fan mail markings? There's some generally broad categories. The first category is the not at or uncalled for at type of marking. This is when a letter was addressed to the incorrect studio. So you thought your star was at MGM. They weren't. So it got a marking not at MGM Studios, or maybe another wording is uncalled for. So here's two examples, not at MGM and uncalled for at 20th Century Fox. And these are the most common type of auxiliary markings. The next type is one that forwarded a letter from one studio to another, or from a corporate office, maybe New York City to Hollywood. And these are less common. So you see here, forwarded to United Artists Studio, and one just says Universal Pictures Company at Universal City, California. Again, forwarding markings. Even less common are forwarding to a private publicity agency or fan mail agency. And we'll see some of these on cover. But for example, if you addressed your letter to a star, but their fan mail was now handled by the General Artists Corporation, this forwarding mark was applied to your fan mail cover. Or if it was handled by United Fan Mail, an agency that the stars paid to process their fan mail, this type of marking was applied to their fan letter. And finally, the fourth type is forwarding to a private residence. And these are very scarce. So for example, this one here, Los Angeles Athletic Club, Los Angeles, California. A few stars lived there. It was an inexpensive home to some movie stars. And if you addressed your fan letter to the studio and the star themselves was handling it, this redirection hand stamp or forwarding hand stamp was applied to their fan mail, and it was sent to the Los Angeles Athletic Club. Importantly, in the early days, like silent film, there were some stars that actually processed their own fan mail. They thought they felt that was important to do that, while some stars, the studios handled it. And this final one, this is a bit more recent, Christopher Reeve. I'm not sure if this is his private residence. It is now, but I don't know if he lived there or if it was some person handling his fan mail. But occasionally you'll see this on fan letters addressed to actor Christopher Reeve that address it to, this is basically a house. I'm just going to digress a little bit to emphasize the importance of fan mail. You know, we think, oh, letter to a movie star, that's nice. But it was very important to the movie fan. It was important to the studios themselves. It was important to the stars. And it also documents entertainment history. And we'll see a few examples of that. Also, the routes of fan letter to get to a star. I've cataloged over 25 different ways a fan letter could get from a fan to the star. So those are routes. And what is that? That's postal history, guys. So let's look at some of this. Okay, importance to the fans. You get fan letters from extreme locations. This is from a British prisoner of war at Stalag 20A in Thorn, Poland, to probably the most famous actress of the World War II era, Deanna Durbin. And inside you see the note that this prisoner of war sent to her. Dear Miss Durbin, I'm writing on behalf of a small party, 16 men, to ask whether it would be possible for you to send us a selection of photos of some of the popular stars to help beautify our camp. A man is in the prisoner of war camp, and what does he do? He writes to a movie star. So it was very important to the fan to be able to connect with their star. And this is an extreme example of that. The studios themselves encouraged fan mail. Remember, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So they wanted people to be excited about their stars. So studios actively encouraged fan mail. And fans believe the stars read their mail. But this was impossible to the sheer volume of it. And to illustrate this, here's a studio publicity photo of actress Dorothy Lamour receiving a bundle of fan mail. Again, promulgating the illusion that the stars actually read the letter that you sent them. So it was important to the studios. I love this memo. This is a memo to actress Betty Hutton that chronicles how much fan mail she got the week of February 17th, 1945. And the reason for this is the studios actively monitored the amounts of fan mail stars were getting. A star that got more fan mail could demand higher salaries. Conversely, a star that was not getting much fan mail, they were on their way out. And if you will, it's a form of censorship by the studios to monitor the fan mail, to understand, was the persona for that star correct? Should we tweak something? What sort of role should we give the star? So it was very important to both the studios and the stars themselves, fan mail. All right, so let's get in, and here's an example of a route. This is a British World War I am well card from a British soldier. And look who it's addressed to, Charlie Chaplin, Esquire. But it's not addressed to Hollywood. It's addressed to S&A Film Corporation in Chicago. The early film industry in the United States was much like the early days of the PC industry. All you needed was a garage, and you could become a PC company. Well, in the silent film era, all you needed was a camera. So there were studios all over the country, Chicago, Toledo, Washington, D.C. And this is a beautiful example that Charlie Chaplin, when he first came to the United States of England, was the big star at S&A Studios in Chicago. That's where the soldier addressed his letter. But here's an example of manuscript auxiliary markings. He was no longer there. He had left S&A Chicago for the sunny climes of Southern California, indicated by this up here, this manuscript address. And within a few years, S&A Studios was no more because they lost their biggest star. So some early mail, you get manuscript auxiliary markings. Okay, so we talked about you had to address your fan letter. So How did you find the address of your favorite star? Well, it's very simple. You go to your fan mail guide. There were books published, fan mail guides, addresses of the stars. Fan magazines had them. So if you wanted to send a fan letter to Dawn Adams, circled here, you look up and she's at MGM. So all you have to do, Miss Dawn Adams, MGM Studios, Hollywood, California. If it were this simple. Again, I've documented at least 25 different ways a fan letter could get to a movie star. And just one other thing, the post office was heavily involved in getting fan mail to the correct star. So this is actually a publicity photo of a Hollywood postal station clerk, T.A. Shipman, responsible for fan mail. So the post office had special clerks just devoted to handling fan mail at their Hollywood station. All right, so let's look at some of these auxiliary markings I've been teasing you about. So here is a very early studio mark, 1920. In fact, this is one of the earliest known auxiliary markings. So this is addressed to silent film actress Agnes Ayres at Fox Studio, but she was not at Fox. So this hand stamp was applied and it was redirected. And to give you an idea of this, the scarcity of this, there's 2 examples of this marking known. So out of 30,000 covers I've seen 2 examples of this mark. Now we're going to just go through some studios that have been lost to history. I'd never heard of these, to be honest. And these are just philatelic reminders of studios that no longer exist. And these are all most of these are from the silent film era. Not at Tech Art Studios in Hollywood. Not at Metropolitan Studio. This is the only recorded example of that mark. Again, this was some small studio during the silent film era. Pathé, not only did they do newsreels, but there was a studio branch in the United States. This is the only recorded example of the Not at Pathé Studios auxiliary marking. First National Studios. This is an example of the not at First National Studios. Again, this shows the worldwide appeal of Hollywood movie stars. This is from Finland, and people are writing from all over the world to these Hollywood movie stars that they had seen in their silent film theater somewhere. So not at First National Studios. There's also scarce, probably less than 5 of these recorded. For those that were into the Our Gang comedies, the Hal Roach Studios producer those. A fan letter to Maureen O'Sullivan with a Not at Hal Roach Studios marking. Again, this marking also very scarce. There's about 3 or 4 examples recorded. This is a personal favorite. Monogram Pictures was one of these really obscure studios. Their famous star was Whip Wilson, which I know you all have heard of. And that's their famous star. They did a lot of cowboy movies. This is the only, and to find fan mail to Monogram Pictures is very rare. To find a studio marking is even scarcer, and this is the only recorded example of the Not at Monogram auxiliary marking. A little more recent example to actress Debbie Reynolds at Paramount. But you'll see it says Not at Columbia. So that means it went from Paramount to Columbia and bounced around a little bit. So this is a more recent example from Columbia Pictures. Universal Studios to Robert Wagner with a very bold Not at Universal. Universal, I don't have the example. Universal has the largest auxiliary marking, Not at Universal, and the smallest. It's about the size of a dime. MGM, Marilyn Monroe, nice cover in and of itself to the famous actress, but also with a nice Not at MGM auxiliary marking. RKO, now you can get into some fly-spec philately. We see here, it says uncalled for at RKO Radio Pictures Incorporated. And you see this one has the same thing, but the incorporator is missing. So perhaps there was damage to the hand stamp, or maybe the other one just didn't have it to begin with. So, you can find, some varieties on these hand stamps. Here's one that's fairly generic. Care of Pathé DeMille Studios. There really was no such place, but there was a Pathé Studios and a DeMille Studios. So really don't know what the not at, where it was applied. Just it does exist. And this is the only recorded example of that marking. Again, another more recent example, Richard Chamberlain at Paramount Studios, and it says uncalled for at Paramount Studios. Now, if you get lucky, you can get multiple studios. So here, Miss Jane Russell from Great Britain to Paramount Studios. She wasn't there, so it was indicated uncalled for at Paramount Studios. And we have to guess that it was then sent to United Artists Studios because it has a not at United Artists Studios. So sometimes we have to do a little philatelic archaeology to trace the path of this cover. Okay, so we beg the question, how was this mail forwarded? And it's interesting, for any other topic of Hollywood history, there's probably 40 books written about it. Fan mail, sometimes it gets mentioned, but more as a social phenomenon, not as not as the logistics of fan mail. So you have to sort of make some guesses and look at pictures. So this is a studio publicity photograph from showing silent film actress Clara Bow. And look what she's holding, her bundles of fan mail. And if you look, this is an enlargement of what she's holding on the right. And it says basically, all for Clara Bow, famous players, Lasky Studios. So, one belief is that all that mail that was maybe misdirected was just bundled like this together and then sent to her. So this is some evidence that that's what happened. And there's further evidence of how this was handled. Okay, here's one to June Lockhart, if you remember her from Lost in Space like I do, and to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. But look at this manuscript, all four, somewhat implying that there's a whole stack of these misaddressed covers. The top one says all four. They're bundled up maybe with a rubber band or paper clip or something. And that whole bundle was then forwarded to these various places. So we're getting to see maybe that's what happened. The other piece of that puzzle is here, is this post office form 4416. And you see it's a direct package, and it says all for firm on face. So you see here, this is a movie star cover addressed to actress Paula Raymond. It's stamped uncalled for at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but this is her home address on this form. So again, the working theory is this is a stack of fan mail, possibly all having this hand stamp uncalled for at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and the top envelope of that bundle had her real address. They take that, and you see it's even stapled on the cover. This is given back to the post office, and it's finally delivered to her. So this is another personal favorite because it gives strong evidence of how that errant fan mail was handled. So let's look at some examples. I mentioned before that there are various routes. So here's an example of forwarding between Hollywood studios. So it was addressed to actor John Hall at Warner Brothers, but he wasn't at Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers was nice, and they put a hand stamp on saying this is where it should be sent because they knew where he was. So they forwarded it to United Artists Studio Corporation. So again, forwarding between Hollywood studios. So here's one forwarding from the New York office to the Hollywood studio. I mentioned that many of the corporate offices were in New York City, while the studios that did the filming were in Hollywood. So here, someone thought that Rita Hayworth, well, Columbia Pictures is in New York City, I'll write my fan letter there. But they didn't handle fan mail. So this hand stamp was applied, redirecting it to Columbia Pictures back to Hollywood. And this is the only example I've ever seen of this mark. So again, this is another example from a New York office to Hollywood studio. actress Marceline Day at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer on Broadway. And they said, nope, we don't handle fan mail here. Send it to Culver City with this Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios Culver City hand stamp. And again, this is the only recorded example of that mark. Okay, forwarding from New York office to Hollywood studio to parts unknown. So Farley Granger at RKO, and RKO put this saying, oh, not here. You really want this letter sent to Universal Pick Corporation in Universal City, California. That's what this did. But when they got it at Universal, he wasn't there, so they applied to you at not at Universal, and then somehow it got delivered to him. Okay, forwarding from New York studio to multiple Hollywood studios. This again is another personal favorite from the silent film era. This is addressed to Miss Mildred Harris, care of Jewel Productions on Broadway. Well, Mildred Harris was at that time the wife of Charlie Chaplin. And, some of these stars bounced between studios in New York and Hollywood. So she wasn't at Jewel Productions anymore. Someone figured, well, she's married to Charlie Chaplin. Let's redirect to Charlie Chaplin Studios in Hollywood. That's a good guess. So that was done there. But she wasn't there either. It was redirected to the Universal Film Manufacturing Company at Universal City. This is the original name of what we know now as Universal Studios. And this is the only recorded example of that forwarding mark I've ever seen. And it's also kind of neat. It was sent from Shanghai, again, showing the worldwide appeal. So this is, again, one of my personal favorite covers. Also showing some great entertainment history. Okay, for some reason, the people in Eastern Europe love to write to the US movie stars. You get these centers of fan mail, like people in Ghana love to write to movie stars. Why? I don't know. But this is addressed to actor Antonio Moreno. And interesting, so it's addressed to Metro-Goldwyn Studio, another piece of history. This is before Mayer was joined, so that it was Metro-Goldwyn Studio. And again, he lived at the Los Angeles Athletic Club. So this forwarded to there because he handled his own fan mail. And there's actually several styles of this Los Angeles Athletic Club auxiliary marking. Okay, so this is addressed to Hollywood and then forwarded to a publicity agency. Again, this is actress Mary Pickford and in Hollywood, California. Not much to go on, but that's, that Hollywood fan mail clerk that we showed a picture of, he's trained to figure out where this goes. And her publicity agency was the Tom Connolly Agency. And if you can look up in Hollywood almanacs, addresses of publicity agency, find that address and map it to the name. And that was the address of her publicity agency. So again, addressed to Hollywood, but it was then forwarded by an auxiliary mark to her publicity agency. Another example of that, Mr. Gregory Peck, and his mail was handled by the N.S. Finley Agency. So by this time, the studios themselves had divested themselves of handling fan mail. They just forwarded this to his publicity agency to handle his fan mail. Another example to a publicity agency, the William Morris Agency. And this is, again, the only recorded example of this type of mark. This is one of those ones that's intriguing. So it's addressed to Sonia Henney at 20th Century Fox Studios in Wembley, Middlesex, United Kingdom. And then it was forwarded in manuscript to the publicity department of 20th Century Fox in Soho. But really, fan mail was not handled by the UK offices. So there's this intriguing manuscript auxiliary marking, New York Basket. I wonder if these were all put into an envelope and then sent via a courier or something to the New York office to handle the fan mail. Again, it's one of these things we just don't know yet. But auxiliary markings cannot just be hand stamps, but they can be manuscript markings. But here's one that was forwarded from a UK studio to a Hollywood studio using a mark. So this was addressed to John Bowles at Fox Film Studios in Wembley Park, United Kingdom. And it was forwarded to the Fox Film Studio in Hollywood, California. And this was a great way to avoid paying the international postage rate if you're a true movie fan. At some point, the Screen Actors Guild became involved in fan mail. It's because when studios began divesting themselves of their fan mail departments, fans really didn't know where to write their letter. But they figured that the Screen Actors Guild, which is the union of performers and stage workers, etc., they would know where to forward the letter. So here's an example to Clint Eastwood, and this forwarding mark to the William Morris Agency just tells them where to send the fan letter. And then here's another example, Pat Boone in care of the Screen Actors Guild. And this is forward to the General Artists Corporation, which was, again, a fan mail agency. Many of you remember Don Adams, agent from Get Smart. So this is addressed to actually Viacom, which is more of a TV studio. And he wasn't there, or Viacom did not handle fan mail. So it was forwarded to the United Fan Mail Service using this auxiliary marking. We had the same problem. You wrote to United Fan Mail Service, and that's their address, 8966 Sunset Boulevard, but he really wasn't handled by them. So United Fan Mail Service had their own auxiliary markings, not with United Fan Mail. So again, not only did the studios have these markings, but publicity agencies and fan mail agencies had them too, because they had to help reroute errant fan mail. Just a very unusual marking, answered. People got so many fan letters. How did you keep track of which ones had been answered, which ones weren't? The only actress I've ever seen with this marking is it's Paula Raymond at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. There was a period of about a month where this hand stamp was used. I have about 5 or 6 examples. Before that and after that, they didn't use it. So it was just probably some bookkeeping thing, but it's a nice little miscellaneous type of auxiliary marking. And any good collection, though, has to come to a sad end, the demise of fan mail. So what's happening now is that someone wrote to John Wells at care of the West Wing TV show, and there was a hand stamp applied, which was nice. So we have an auxiliary marking, but look what it says. Return to sender. Please correspond with stars using a website. So is that the end of fan mail? Probably is, but that's a nice closure to get that type of hand stamp to say, sorry, fan mail is extinct. You have to enter the digital age now. So I just like to conclude with this slide. Again, almost 30 years of collecting this, 30,000 covers. Been about there's over 100 different markings recorded. Right now, find about 1 to 2 markings per year. So I know you'll all be looking for me now. There was an AMC monograph published in 2010 on these markings, and it cataloged what was known then, and that had about 70 markings. So since then, over 30 have been added. An update is in the works. I was hoping to finish it this year, but that's not going to happen. And what is the holy grail of these markings? I showed you at the beginning a fan mail letter to silent film actress Mary Pickford, probably one of the most famous silent film actresses of all time. She and Douglas Fairbanks formed their own studio, Pickford Studios. There's quite a bit of mail addressed to them. No Pickford Studios auxiliary mark has ever been seen. So that's the holy grail. But don't tell any dealers that. As we mentioned before, they'll up the price. Disney is another one. It's sort of an outlier because is it a studio? Yeah, it is, but it was more animation. But in the 50s, when you start coming up with Disney movies and Disney TV shows, there is fan mail known addressed to Disney stars. And a couple of them have receiving marks. Most studios did not do that, which is nice, but I've never seen a marking that says something like not at Disney. So these two are sort of the holy grail of auxiliary markings. So that concludes my slideshow. Thank you for your attention. Be happy to answer any questions or go back, explain anything.
Yeah, thanks, Regis. That was a fascinating presentation. Um, it's a, I can see how you, it's very restricted in the number of markings that are out there. I mean, 100 doesn't seem restricted, but it certainly isn't like return markings and things like that. So I can understand it's a real treasure hunt for you at this point, you know? I wanted to ask you because my PhD is in film studies, and I wrote about film music for film studies. Um, do you know of any auxiliary markings that have to do with Hollywood film composers?
Well, there wouldn't be marking for composers. There is mail addressed to non-stars,
Yeah,
very rare. So like maybe a producer sometime, or maybe a writer. But is the only way to really identify it is if you knew the name.
yeah, of course, because there's some very famous composers, Wolfgang Korngold, who wrote all the music for the Errol Flynn movies, and he was actually a very serious classical composer. So I don't know. I'll have to have a look, and if I come across any of them, I'll let you know. But
Okay.
that would be very interesting to me. So, does anybody else have any questions?
Hey,
Doug?
Regis, this is Tom. Question for you. What was the very first such auxiliary marking that you have or found? And what is the most recent one that you've found?
Um, if you remember the first slide, it said they're like the uncalled for a 20th Century Fox. That was probably the first one. Is that what you mean? In my collection, one was the first one? Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the most recent one, I haven't shown it here, and that'll be for another day. But let me think. Actually, the Not monogram is fairly recent. The William Morris one is also fairly recent.
Doug, you had your hand up.
It was a fascinating talk, and I've read your exhibit that you posted years ago, and also your chapter in the book. A couple of comments. First of all, you mentioned that most of these go to stars. When I was a little kid, The Sound of Music came out, the movie, and I actually wrote to the director, Robert Wise, and he responded. So there were communications to people other than just the stars.
Hmm.
Um, and my question then was, you mentioned with that RKO studio marking, there were two examples of it, one of which the INC was missing.
Yes.
Um, I was looking at that in the brief time it was up, and I think what I saw was that on the left-hand side, there's a dot in red, which makes me think that the imprint was made. Let's see.
That's fine. Oh, wait. Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yes. What I was thinking was if they leaned extra hard on the left side of the stamp, then the right side might be missing. But now I'm noticing that the R way over there on the left is weak,
Yeah.
suggesting if anything, they were pushing hard on the right, and the AT is very heavy. So this does suggest that the ink was gone. And the fact there's a comma there suggests that it was removed maybe. If they started going to RKO radio pictures and not ink, because they wouldn't have put a comma there if they made a new one and they wouldn't have had it off center.
Yeah.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah. And again, these are not controlled devices necessarily. And one thing I did not mention was inking. You know, most are in blue, occasionally in red. I suspect, whatever ink pad was handy. There was no real control over what color ink. So we don't even consider ink color.
Howard makes the point that it looks like there's an address label on that back cover, which may have fallen off. So maybe that's the reason.
Oh,
No, okay.
Right, because the care of is the last line of text, and there had to have been an address of some sort.
No, could be. Oh, okay. Interesting point.
Good. Anybody else have any other questions?
I also noticed in your, I think it's a few
Those in-
slides before this one, there was a 1.5 cents postage due, a letter that was mailed, I guess, with 1.5 cents and then got 1.5 cents added. It's unusual in the US to see a fractional cent postage due.
Mm-hmm.
And I should also say that the studios were quite annoyed at the amount of postage due. I mean, literally, it was millions of dollars of expense to process fan mail.
Mm-hmm.
It
Well,
was
they could
kind
always
of,
refuse it.
What's that?
They could always refuse it if it was postage due.
true.
Yeah, I think that looks bad.
Yeah.
Looking through the various slides, it was interesting to note the different ways people spelled the word California.
Yes, and that's true. And also, it was good that it was actually on there. You know, there's some fan letters just say, Mary Pickford, United States, and it got there. Okay.
Amazing.
Well, also Deanna Durbin. There's so many spellings of that.
You're lucky the Mary Pickford one didn't go to Canada because that's where she was from.
Yes.
Says the Canadian who has to claim all things Canadian whenever possible to do so.
Well, Deanna Durbin was also Canadian.
Was she? Yeah,
Yes.
that I didn't know.
I didn't know this either. I started reading some books on these stars, and yeah, she was Canadian.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And she actually she retired early and just moved to Paris and basically dropped off Sophie and managed and she doesn't respond to letters, but there's a couple people she responds to. And this man was selling some of his correspondence on eBay, but he knew what he had. Okay. So a normal DNA cover is $1. His were like 100. And yes, I have a couple. So
It's great. Anyone else?
Hey, Regis, this is Frederick.
yes.
I recall seeing a multi-frame exhibit on Mary Pickford, if my memory is correct.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yes, that's so my collaborator in this is Tom Richards, and we've collected this. We share information. That's his exhibit.
Uh-huh.
And yes, I have seen it.
Yeah, I judged it within the last couple of years. Can't remember at what show, but that's immaterial.
I think you and I were on the jury at that show, but I can't remember either. So we're even.
There's some fascinating postal history covers in that exhibit. I couldn't tell you if there were any auxiliary marks. Apparently not, or at least not the ones that you're looking for today in terms of her studio, the Pickford
Yes,
studio.
they're correct.
Oh.
Yeah, just one item I love from that. It's a deed when she and her husband bought Pickfair, their house, and it has a revenue stamp on it. I mean, what an item for an exhibit on Mary Pickford.
All right. Well, great. Thank you for that. That's just a really wonderful, just a wonderful presentation, and even more fascinating than I thought it was going to be. So thank you for that, Regis. And
Oh, you're quite welcome. And
that's the, I was going to say,
are we meeting at Chicago show?
I can't remember. I know we met at Gas. I don't think we're meeting at Chicago, but
There's someplace I thought there's a meeting, but I could be mistaken.
I'll go back and look. I can't remember. I
Okay.
think Gary Lowe did the talk at the last at GAS, but we'll have a look and I'll let you know. Okay,
Okay.
send out an announcement about it. So
Okay.
that's great. If you don't mind stopping sharing your screen, I'll just put up this last screen for everyone.
Yeah, as soon as I figure out where
I
that
can do
is.
it. I can do it.
Okay, do it. Yeah.
We're gonna get
I'm
rid of
using
you.
Zoom in the app, which I've never used before.
All right. So I just wanted everybody to know. Of course, we're back on the second Tuesday of every month. The coming year, we're not going to take a break in July and August. So, and I'm very happy to say that we have our calendar of second Tuesday auxiliary markings Zoom meetings full right to the end of December 2026. Do have a look at the calendar online, because on the auxiliary markings website, because a couple of these involve European presenters who are going to be presenting on Saturday because they just don't want to do it at midnight for us. So we're going to be doing it at a little bit different time. But the next presentation is with Arnie Jansen, who's a member of the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada. And he's doing a talk on unusual auxiliary markings on unusual mail. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard Arnie speak, but Arnie has a combination of a colossal amount of knowledge and information, along with a really pithy sense of humor. And so I think it'll be very entertaining. And my apology for the fact that he's not going to be speaking about litho bubbles, although he does have a presentation on that. But that was the only picture of him I could find. So there's Arnie on the left, and I hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, we thank you very much for coming tonight. And if you weren't present with us, for enjoying the presentation later on our YouTube channel. I thank you for, as always, for your interest in what we do, and invite you to join us. And I look forward to seeing you in a month's time. So thanks again, and a wonderful evening to everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.